Meeting to order. Sorry, let me get the agenda up here. And as we do for every meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Mi'kmaq, the ancestral lands of the Mi'kmaq people, and also to acknowledge the history of our African Nova Scotian communities around Nova Scotia, the 52 Black communities around Nova Scotia. This is African Heritage Month, and lots going on to recognize the contributions of our African Nova Scotian community around Nova Scotia. With that, we'll do a quick check with commissioners, and starting with Commissioner Beals.
Yep, I'm here.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Blackburn.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep, you can hear you fine. Commissioner Board sent her regrets. Commissioner Kent.
Hello, Councillor Commissioner Smith. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Simon producing. We're just noting that we're having some trouble sending the meeting live. It appears to indicate that it's still in pre-live. Phoebe and I are just working on some troubleshooting right now. We just want to let you folks know.
All right, so I'll just pause and wait.
Yeah, just a suggestion, Mr. Chair, that we pause the meeting and wait till we can get it live.
Yep.
Because we will have to redo the mic checks and everything as well once we go live too.
Yep, no problem.
It was a good warm up, Lindell. So
yeah, that was good.
I liked it. Yeah.
All right, so that would give me some time to get myself together.
I'm going to suggest that we just take 5 minutes. Sorry, 1 second. Just take 5 minutes and then we'll come back.
No problem. I'll be here.
Can I ask a question about the Auditor General's report when we see it?
This is Simon just jumping in. It appears that we do now have a live indication.
Yeah,
so I believe we may be live, so we'll send you live now.
Yep. And Carol, you can once we call the order, and when we get to the approval of the order of business, you can ask your question. So again, welcome. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay. Welcome to today's Board of Police Commissioners meeting, February 8th, 2021. Had some technical difficulties, so sorry, folks, if you were waiting for the meeting to start. We're a little late. Before we call a meeting to order, we always acknowledge that we are on Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded land of Mi'kmaq people. And also during African Heritage Month, we acknowledge the contributions of our African Nova Scotian brothers and sisters in the 52 African Nova Scotian communities around Nova Scotia. And since we are here, we'll do some checks. First, Commissioner Beals.
Yep, I'm here.
Oops, sorry, I didn't have my camera on. I apologize. Commissioner Blackburn.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. We're here, and hopefully you can hear me okay.
Oh, okay. And also, if you're not seeing me, we have some technical difficulties, so only the audio is available at the moment. And clerks, if we're up and running, just give us a shout to let folks know.
Just we had initially some camera issues, but I think we've got you now, Councillor Smith.
All right, what a day! This is how Monday's supposed to start. Commissioner Kent.
Yes, I am here, ready to roll.
All right, great. And Commissioner McDougall. You were on mute. I know I know you're working, but we'll just.
Hello. Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And before we get going to our regular meetings, we have a presentation, and I'm just wondering if Chief has past Commissioner Councillor Tony Mancini with him in the office. Okay,
Hi,
you
Chair.
do great.
Yeah, we're here, and we have Commissioner Mancini as well, and I'm going to turn it over to Chief Superintendent Gray to start.
All right, great, thank you. So really quickly, for folks who are wondering why we are doing this, we're acknowledging past Commissioner Tony Mancini for his work on the Board of Police Commission while he was here. And round of applause, thank you. And we have a presentation as the Chief Casella said, Chief Gray is going to lead it off. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So on behalf of the RCMP and certainly Halifax District, myself as the district commander, but also our commanding officer, Lee Bergerman, who was in my chair before, I have a small token of our appreciation for your service and commitment to the Halifax Regional Municipality Board of Police Commissioners from December 2016 to December 2020. Thank you so much for your service. I did clean my hands beforehand. There you go. Got it? Okay.
and Councillor and retired Commissioner, on behalf of the Halifax Regional Police and all of the staff, we want to thank you for your commitment to policing in HRM and your commitment to all of our officers and everything they do every day while you continue to ensure that we're available to be out there protecting the public. Small token of appreciation on our behalf, and I'd like you just to accept that. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chief.
Well done.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. You know, it was an honor to serve the past 4 years on the Police Commission. I respect the men and women that serve in both police forces, the work that they do every day. We're so fortunate to have them in our municipality. Doesn't mean there's not a lot of work to be done, and there's still a lot of work to be done, and I hope this commission keeps the Wortley report #1 as a priority. We need to continue to work our relationship with our African Nova Scotia citizens along with our Indigenous citizens. I want to acknowledge Steve Craig, who was the chair of the commission when I first joined, and Steve really regrouped to refocus the commission, and I thank him for his service. And I hope as we move forward, I was a little disappointed, I must admit, that I didn't see the body-worn cameras on this budget, but I understand the chief has in his budget a civilian that will take on that role, and hopefully we'll see it next time around. But thank you very much. And again, thank you to all that are on the commission, but most importantly, the men and women that serve in both police forces. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, Councillor, great to see you. Great, thank you. Thank you, Chiefs. All right, so moving on to committee announcements. Are there any announcements that folks might have? Well, there's none. I'll just mention, with the snow that we got, I think our final number was 39 centimeters in HRM. So if you're doing anything with municipal services, make sure you watch what website, social media, listen to the radio, because there are some changes that are happening for some of our services, transit, ferry, garbage pickup, etc. So make sure you're looking online, and if you have the ability to, or calling 311 just to make sure that your services are still up and running. Moving to approval of the minutes from January 18th, 21, January 28th, 21, and February 2nd, 21. And we want to make motions to approve the minutes or have any comments?
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Becky.
Commissioner Becky and Commissioner McDougall, moved by both of them. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, the minutes have been moved. So approval of the order of business and approval of additional additions and deletions. Councillor McDougall, you did have a question on the Auditor General's report.
Yes, I was just curious to know whether when we discuss that, it will be on screen. Can we?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can.
Okay, that was all.
Yeah, so for folks that are wondering, so we're getting as pretty much as a courtesy from the Auditor General's office, an update on a report that has to do with security matters related to the HRP, sorry. So the Audit and Finance Committee will be getting the report this week, the same information, and the Auditor General's office wanted to make sure that the commission got an update before it went to the Audit and Finance Committee, which the Auditor General reports to that committee when reports come. So really, we're just getting an update, and it's in camera because of the sensitivity around security within HRP. But there is a public report that will be available at the Audit and Finance Committee when they meet. Moving on, if there's no changes to the agenda, I call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I so move. It's Lisa.
Thank you. And moved by Lisa, second by Commissioner McDougall. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none. All right. No business arising out of the minutes. Calls for declaration of conflict of interest. Seeing none. Consideration of deferred business. Moving on to 7.1, update on the Board of Police Commissioners 1920 work plan. So this one, we deferred it mostly because some of the items that were on here were items that past Commissioner Mancini had responsibility for. So I wanted to talk to him a little bit about any work that he done on his items, but also just, talking to the chief in RCMP if there was anything that we might be missing. Also understanding that some of our current commissioners their terms are coming up, which will change how this work plan looks as well. And I believe, clerk, if you have it in front of you, Commissioner Beals and Commissioner Borden's March is when their term. And sorry, I could be incorrect. That's why I need you to help me out, clerk. But I think March might be their terms.
Yes, it's March this year.
Right. So March this year. And I believe Commissioner Borden is eligible to reapply, but I'm not sure. I think Commissioner Beals might have already done two terms as police commission. I'm not sure.
I believe that is accurate. I believe Commissioner Borden has another term potential.
Right. So unless we change the rules as a commission, you can only do 2 terms consecutively. And obviously, if a person is interested, I think they can come back after that term. But sadly, we'll be losing Commissioner Beals, and we'll have a new commissioner or 2, depending on what Commissioner Borden decides. So that also will change our work plan. Some of the items Commissioner Borden took ownership of, and what we need to figure out as a commission is, do we want to wait until March to redetermine who's going to take responsibility? Do folks want to take responsibility now? We do, as Commissioner Borden said when we would talk about this, we do need more folks to take on some roles, and I'll take ownership of mine, of not being fully able to do as much work as I like to do on those items, and hopefully I can change that. But I'm not sure if there's any comments. Folks might have ideas, feelings when you look at the work plan, how to move forward with it, because some of these items are very important, and we need to figure out a way forward. So I see Commissioner Blackburn, your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm sort of leaning towards waiting until we have the new commissioners on board before reassigning. I know that the items that I had, and the other reason too is I'd like to see where we are in March as far as COVID is concerned. The items that I had signed up for were media training, media literacy, and the hope was that we could do that in person in a workshop type setting. And of course, not able to accomplish that this year for obvious reasons, but I'm hoping that things will look a little bit brighter come March, and we can start setting some dates for for some of those workshops. So my inclination is to wait until the new commissioners are on board.
Okay, no, good feedback. I'll go to you. I see you, Carl. I'll go to you in a sec. With Jacques, are you here today? I can't see. Just looking at the participant.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here.
Really quick. So, I know that we this past week that the province announced further relaxation of some of the restrictions. How does that affect us with our meetings, and not just the police commission, but meetings in general for public? Oh, I can't hear you. Let me just, if you're
your microphone on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It doesn't change anything in terms of meetings goes. We're still restricted to the 10 number. So we're actually on the verge of converting over to Zoom platform. You'll hear more about that going forward, but we think Teams is not it was the solution at the time, because that was the only solution that was secure. Now that Zoom has enhanced their security protocols, where John Trays and the clerk and Jane Fraser, who's responsible for ICT, are working hard to try to convert all our meetings over to the Zoom platform, which makes it a lot more effective in terms of engagement and participation in a secure environment.
Okay, great. So in terms of in person, still no change, but we're going to try to do the virtual in a more efficient way. All right, that's great to know.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. So Commissioner McDougall.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out that just for context and background, that this is the third work plan that I've been involved in. Started previous to my joining the commission and led by Chair Craig. And I think Councillor Mancini, as a facilitator, led the first discussion and then continued to do that afterwards. I think given the kind of time that we've had in the last year and the fact that we are changing, or the possibility we'll have new commissioners, I think, and the opportunity for Zoom, I think it's possible for us to look at this whole plan and decide what is still relevant, because some of it may not be anymore. And this was a point in time. It was done in November 2019 and in an in-person meeting. And so, there's been a lot that's shifted and changed since then. So I think one of the first things we might want to do, I'm also mindful too that once we replace a commissioner, it doesn't happen in a week. It happens, with a fair amount of public announcement, call for applications, interviews, etc. Could take up to 8 weeks, 10 weeks. And who knows in COVID time if that's going to apply too. So I think it's really important for us to look at the relevance of this document and make some decisions about what's still important to us and what we want to change. Some of these things were accomplished and we can strike off the list, but others we may not think are worth keeping. Just a thought.
Great. So leaning towards holding off until we get new members or a new member, depending on how things look out. I guess from the clerk's office, not to go too far off, but how does that look if we were to get a new member? What is the timeline on that person from the time someone leaves to the time somebody gets sworn in?
So that would largely depend on our applicant pool and how much interest we had on it. So we are going to start the process of advertising, looking for new members or looking for people who'd like to reapply for the commission. There is a provision in the administrative order that allows members to sit until the spot is filled. So It's not like that somebody's going to be off the commission immediately as soon as March hits, the calendar clicks over to March. we will be able to operate with the existing members until we do have replacements available.
Okay, great. Good to know. Any comments, Commissioner Beals?
No, I have none. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Kent. All right, great, thanks. Okay, so what we're gonna do then is we'll mark this as done for now. Obviously, if you look at the work plan, if there's items that you feel you would be interested in, please put your name forward. And as we review this in the next couple months, we'll determine if some of these items might not be relevant. But yeah, I think it does make sense for us to wait for a bit. In this work, even though officially it's in the work plan, some of these discussions still can happen without being part of the work plan. So when it comes to public engagement, when it comes to policy, and I know that both HRP and RCMP would work with us if needed. I can hear something, but I'm not sure where it's coming from. If you're not speaking, this. All right, there we go. It's gone. So with that, we'll move on to that item, and we'll have that as done, and we'll revisit it probably maybe April. We'll add it to the agenda. Depending, we'll keep it at agenda setting to how we move forward with this item. So moving on to 7.2, overview of officer training presentations from Halifax Regional Police and Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So we'll start with Chief Constella, and I believe you have Chief Reed McCombs and Staff Sergeant Mark McDonald with you as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and through you. I'm not sure if that's sound out. Looks like it stopped there. So thank you for the opportunity to present today. I do have both Deputy Chief McCombs and Staff Sergeant Mark McDonald with me. Staff Sergeant McDonald is in charge of our training branch, and he will be available to ask any detailed questions once the presentation is done. The presentation today will provide themes and main topics and some of what falls under each of the areas as far as our training goes. Next slide, please. So the Halifax Regional Police uses an annual block training model, which was introduced in 2009. This model allows HRP to stay on the forefront of emerging issues while receiving a constant and consistent schedule of training across the organization. Training is delivered in learning blocks and covers key areas of policing practice, and the areas are identified there. They fall under investigative, diversity and inclusion, a number of general topics, de-escalation techniques, use of force, and supplementary training as identified. The overall program reflects identified needs, emerging issues, risk management, and we're really looking at it from a strategic point of view and ensuring that we cover off mandatory requirements as they relate to training. Just as far as investigative training goes, there's a number of programs and modules that allows officers to stay current with investigative techniques. The focus is on key areas of criminal investigations generally, and training is updated as needed to reflect emerging issues. Some of the examples are listed below and include search and seizure, arrest and detention, and a number of other investigative areas. As far as diversity and inclusion training goes, this is a focus area where we put a lot of effort and a lot of research and training into it. It helps officers identify and address cognitive and implicit bias, which can impact interactions with our citizens and the public in general. And it also allows, constant reflection by the officers to ensure that, we're always considering those things that might be affecting the way we interact with the public. Some examples include fair and impartial policing and diversity awareness. General training is a broad category, and it captures a fairly extensive range of programs meant to continually reinforce and improve competencies to deal with many different areas that officers routinely experience. I will mention also that a number of our civilian members also attend training if it relates to their area of expertise and/or development. Some examples under general training include police ethics, fatigue management, and cybercrime. De-escalation training is very important to our officers. We regularly cover off this type of training, and there's a broad discussion going on nationally right now about how we respond as police across the country, how we de-escalate, and then subsequently how we use force, which we're going to talk about in a minute. De-escalation training programs provide important tools and practices for officers in the area of conflict management, de-escalation, and active listening during police interactions. Some examples include tactical communication, participation in judgmental scenarios, and subject behavior and officer response, otherwise known as SBOR. And then use of force training applies both theory and practical scenarios on how to gain control in a variety of situations, generally involving public safety matters, and always with the goal of using no more force than is reasonably necessary while we maintain officer and public safety to the best of our ability. Some examples include conducted energy weapon and training on the national use of force model. And we also have supplementary training that we add where appropriate and when necessary throughout the year. It can happen at any time and come from a variety of needs or delivery mechanisms. And they are a number of training opportunities that are offered as needed, and we fit them into the schedule. Some examples include our Journey to Change, legitimate and bias-free policing, police ethics and accountability, and racially biased policing. The last two are provided by CPKN and can be done through the computer. Generally a nice way to train, but we also have the in-house training that we do on a regular basis. I'll end the slides end there. We were very broad. I tried to give you the high-level view based on themes, based on the areas where we focus and concentrate. I do have Staff Sergeant McDonald here if anyone has any detailed questions on either some of the courses that were listed or some detail on any of the thematic training, whether it be investigative, diversity and inclusion, or any of the other topics mentioned.
Thank you, Chief. We'll start with Commissioner McDougall.
Thank you, Chief, for this presentation. It's always good to know what officers are offered in terms of training. I was wondering, in terms of the block, do officers apply for that training, or is it mandatory regularly every so whatever period it is?
So it is mandatory, so there really is no application process. They are required to attend. Generally speaking, they are adequacy-driven type courses, things that the officers need to stay current in their various assignments.
Thank you. Another question. I wondered if anyone is assigned a mentor buddy in this context, so that when they do the training, someone who is offering the training has more experience and can be called on to support or lend a hand to an individual officer when they're going through certain training aspects.
So we don't have, through you, Chair, we don't have a formalized mentoring or buddy program as it relates to training. We do have a number of subject matter experts that deliver the training. They are available for supplementary training. And further to your question, if a member, say they were on patrol and they required some guidance or mentoring in a certain area, they would generally reach out to their NCO or the sergeant or supervisor on their shift, and requests can be made to ensure that any training that members are looking for that is available, we'll certainly give it to them. And even further, if there's something that members want to suggest, we would certainly look at it, and that's something that would go to Staff Sergeant McDonald to do some research on and see how we can help out.
Thank you. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about restorative justice and what's offered there.
I'm going to turn it over at this point to Staff Sergeant McDonald. He can talk a little bit about the specifics of that course.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Just in relation to the restorative justice, so the program is actually operated through our court system. So what needs to happen there is when the supervisors in our court system recognize that we're having any issues with whether it's knowledge or process or anything like that, they would contact me in the training section and make me aware that they would like to address that. And sometimes we can just send information out, through emails or through presentations. But if it's something that we feel that is it requires more interaction and more back and forth, then we would include it in one of our block sessions, which run from January till April. And then each member would be given the opportunity to be addressed, updated on the restorative and the restorative justice process.
Thank you. My last question is about provincial requirements for training. Are there any mandated provincial regulations that say you must have this training and then each municipality or RCMP area in the province adds on whatever, or are there no provincial mandates for training?
There are. So annually, we have to requalify with our pistols and our carbines, our C8s, the larger guns, and that's done every year. And the mandate from the province is that we have to do a shoot and ensure that our accuracy is within their parameters. Now, what we do is, where every member has to participate in that, we extend that into a training session. So instead of just doing the bare minimum that the province requires, we keep the members, and each year we'll have a theme of a training with that particular weapon. So that's every year. And every second year, we have to qualify on use of force items such as the CEW or the taser, baton, hand-to-hand contact, CEW, or sorry, OC spray, pepper spray, and I think that covers that. And also every second year, we have to qualify for what we call rapid response. So if there's an active aggressor at a public location, is how we respond and how we deal with that individual. So again, so the firearms are every year, and the use of force and the rapid techniques are every second year.
So would the RCMP be included in these training requirements, or is that separate and federal?
Officially, I don't know, but I believe they are.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kent.
Thank you. Yes, I have quite a few questions. So if I run out of time, Mr. Chair, please just suggest that I come again after others. So, okay, so I have, I don't even know how to approach this. So I guess I'll start with, there's a lot of training, which is really great. First of all, thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of training, which is really great. So the first part I want to talk to is, what kind of system do we have within the HRP to sort of track who's done what, how often they have an obligation to be, put through some more training and such like that? And second to that question would be, what's included in the pre-hire training? So you have all this list of training. Is it reasonable to expect that any new recruit would be already through a whole layer of every one of these? And if not, how soon would they be expected then to get additional training to beef up their their knowledge and understanding of approaches that we would want them to take based on the training we provide. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Commissioner, and through you, Chair. I'll turn it over to Staff Sergeant McDonald in just a minute. Just in regards to our pre-training or cadet training, we have a very extensive training program that runs for about 8 months, covers a litany of topics, most of them mentioned. Particularly what was talked about today was kind of like the maintenance training and the training that would come up post-cadet training. But Staff Sergeant McDonald will be able to give you some more details on that and your other question.
Okay, so there's two questions. One was on the pre-hiring training. And what was the other question? Sorry.
Around how do we track? How do we track for?
So the training section has an administrative assistant who is very organized, and so for any block training, whether it's the firearms, the general training, or the C8s, there's a set schedule that's set up. Supervisors, it is their responsibility to ensure all members are scheduled for the training. So through the training section, we keep track of who's being registered, and then we check periodically to ensure that if we don't see certain names, that we follow up on that. And then to, I guess, get down to the weeds, everybody does a sign-in. We scan the sign-in. It goes into a spreadsheet. The sign-in is actually kept in case there's any dispute later. And then as it gets closer and closer to the end, it's my job to ensure that I track down anybody who doesn't appear to be registered or available to go. And in some cases, we do have people that are off for various reasons that are unable to attend. And just on that, when they do return to work, they are sent to training, and we set up a schedule for them to receive any mandatory training that they miss while they're off, more on a one-to-one basis.
So we have a system then that alerts them that their training is coming up, and that we wouldn't rely on them to try to remember all the training is. They would be alerted to your training time frame is coming, and we need you to be ready.
Yes, exactly. So with more detail to that, how it works is so well ahead of time, generally about a month ahead of time, all supervisors receive a notification of the training with a full syllabus of what's being trained, full schedules, all requirements, everything that's going to be involved. And they have access to the schedules so they can see if a day is full or not. And then they contact me or my assistant, and they plug their people in, and then they're put in. And yeah, so well ahead of time, we can see the days filling up.
Okay. On another layer, what's CPKN?
That is the Canadian Police Knowledge Network. It's
okay.
It's a company out of Prince Edward Island, national company that provides online training for police officers across the country.
Okay, so it's an external source expert. So training is so on that particular slide, you noted that that's outsourced and some in-source training. So generally speaking, do we have a balance of both? We do subject matter training within house and then external hires where we need it?
Yeah, so what we're mainly talking about here today is the block model, which the chief covered very well, obviously. But so we have our block training. We also have continual training throughout the year. There was a question earlier about applying for block or not. To clarify in that, block is mandatory for all members. You have to go. They're subjects that we feel well are mandatory, are necessary. There's continual training throughout the year on more, I guess you could say, more specialized subject matter that members are able to apply for, and that's continual. So we have general training that members apply for, block training that is mandatory, and when it comes to training overall, once we identify the need for the training, then we need to identify whether we have the expertise in-house, and then we can address it, or if we need to go external, and then it just depends on the subject matter and the situation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, I have two more. Can I keep going, or what do you want me to do? Keep going. Okay, so I guess for me, I think it's worth pointing out that training is the training, and it's great that they're attending. I then raised the question, like, what happens if they're, or how would you recognize if potentially any officer was not necessarily practicing what's being trained, like practicing what you've been trained in is taking action? How do we hold them account to knowing that we've successfully trained them? Now there's actionable items that we can see that they're actually, using that training is, I guess, a better way of saying it. How do we identify that?
So thanks for the question, Commissioner, and through you, Chair. So there are a number of ways that we identify it. When a member attends training, whether it be the mandatory block or other training that they might apply for, there's an expectation that, essentially they've passed the programming or met the requirements of the learning objectives that were set out. So that's the expectation. They've demonstrated the skill. From time to time, when members are engaging in their duties, there are occasions when training gaps are identified. I mentioned earlier that perhaps a member might say to their NCO or their watch commander, I'd like to get further training in this, or I believe this would help me if I could arrange that. So that's one way. Another way is observed behavior by supervisors. So supervisors are actively supervising members on the road. They're keeping an eye on them and helping them where they need it. So that's another way. A third way that they might identify it is through the submission of reports. So we have an extensive quality assurance system for our reporting mechanisms, and they are reviewed by supervisors or acting supervisors on a regular basis. Anything that may be identified in there is addressed with the member. So there's a number of ways, most notably through supervision, through regular observations, and supervisors actively interacting with our members when they're out on the street. That goes all the way up. There's watch commanders that are there to assist the supervisors, and then divisional commanders from there all the way up. So those are just some of the ways. Other ways are we might receive some information from the public that causes us to look into something. So that is another additional way. And we continue to monitor and ensure that our members have the very best training and that they are, provided with what they need to carry out their duties.
Thank you. One more question, I guess, two pieces to it. So I was really pleased to see in your general training the listed item of domestic violence cases. I'm wondering around any trauma-informed training and restorative justice. When we say restorative justice, would that capture? I mean, you talked about the court sort of identifying things. There's restorative justice, and then there's restorative approaches, which is a behavioral approaches to how you work with the offender or the victims in this case. So I just want an understanding of both of those training elements, and I guess wondering as well, who would be your subject experts for your restorative approaches and your trauma-informed training? Obviously, it's not just relevant to domestic violence cases, it's relevant to any traumatic situation that would involve crime and potentially, in particular, victims of any sort. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Thanks for the questions, Commissioner, and through you, Chair, I'm going to turn it back over to Staff Sergeant McDonald.
So as far as the trauma-informed, we do have a trauma-informed program, and we've recently extended it. It was initially, as you pointed out, it was initially aimed towards one type of call, usually sexual violence. And we've recognized that, as you pointed out, all types of crimes, even things even things like motor vehicle accidents, it's a more universal technique that all officers should have. So we have opened it up into and we've included in other aspects of our training. So, for example, We've had a level 2 investigator's course for some time. It's a mandatory course for patrol members in order to go to the criminal investigation division. We now have trauma informed as part of that. Again, recognizing that all different types of incidents that officers are responding to, those techniques can be used. We do want to extend it even further, and we are working on that.
Just wondering, who are your subject experts for the trauma-informed and restorative approaches? Just wondering, are you utilizing the, particularly around domestic violence, are you utilizing the experts within the shelters and the women's organizations? Or are you using, like a piece from maybe an education piece from a professor at a university or something? I'm just wondering, where are you getting your subject expert information?
So Halifax Regional Police has a victim services section, and the head of that is Dolly Mosier, and she has a staff. And so whenever we're relying on any kind of training along those lines, that group are our experts, and they will always come and do the training along with us. So in the case of the CID, yes, we can get up and talk about the paperwork and the crimes and all that kind of thing, but when it comes to that, we turn it over to them and they get the room and they're able to use their expertise to apply the trauma-informed approach and education.
Great, I'm pleased to hear that. I've worked with Dolly and many of the folks in victim services when I was working with Transition House Association for the shelters around the province. And in particular, I have great faith in that. So that's great. I'm pleased to hear that that's still in place, and that will serve you well, I'm sure, and as will Dolly. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
No, thank you. Great questions, and yeah, as you said, Dolly and her team are amazing. Going on to Commissioner Blackburn.
Hi there. Thank you very much. And Councillor Kent asked a couple of the questions that I was wondering about, but the one that is left for me is I'm just wondering, who conducts the training? Is this all internal? Is it a mixture of internal, external? I just wonder that because the risk involved with relying 100% on internal training and the potential of just falling into your own silo without any outside influence. So I'm just wondering, what is the percentage of internal versus external training?
So thanks, Commissioner, and through you, Chair. I'll turn it over to Staff Sergeant McDonald in just a minute. But what I can tell you, it's very robust. It isn't only an internal network of training, although that is an important part of it. And we do have a number of subject matter experts, as Staff Sergeant McDonald has mentioned, internally, not only as it relates to victim services, but as it relates to use of force, as it relates to the academics of policing. But we also rely heavily on other expertise. The Canadian Police College, for example, runs a number of courses, and members of the Halifax Regional Police attend on a regular basis, whether it be for FIS or any number of investigative training that they have. We also have connections with the Atlantic Police Academy, and we attend courses through them and with them. They have a connection with Henson College. So there's a number of different areas and inputs that we have in regards to the training, and I'll just turn it over to the Staff Sergeant just to see if he can speak a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, so in relation to that question, I totally agree. To rely on a small group of people to provide all training would be very, very narrow in sight. Just to give you a better idea, so in our training section, there's, as far as the staffing level goes, there's me as a staff sergeant. I have one sergeant, I have 4 constables, I have an administrative assistant, and I have an educational consultant with an adult education background. So it's not a huge section, is my point in that. So when it comes to the firearms, the C8, the use of force, the CEW or tasers, those kind of things. I ensure that that my people are well educated and well up to date on those subjects. But as you say, so for an example, last year, I was concerned that our rapid training may not be as up to date as it normally would. I sent 2 of our members up to Ottawa. I did the research. It turned out Ottawa had the most up to date program. 2 members went up and trained with them, and were able to bring back any new techniques, back to update our program. And as the chief said, so as we identify a training need, there's a bit of a process, and I don't want to go on too long, but I'll sort of give you the basics. One is to identify what the need is, how deep we need to go. Then we need to identify who or where the subject matter is. Sometimes it is within our section, but we have no issue in identifying what is not within our expertise. Then we look within our department. Quite often we will have a subject matter expert, whether it's let's say Dolly Moser for something victim related, or it might be somebody in our criminal investigation division, something like that. And then that person would come in and we would work with them to ensure that we were satisfied with the program, because we have learned, maybe the hard way, just because you're good at a subject doesn't mean that you're good at teaching a subject. So that's why we will take that person, ensure that their expertise is going through our filters to ensure that we're getting the outcomes that we need. And if it's not within our department, then we need to obviously look elsewhere, whether it's the province, elsewhere in the country, sometimes the United States. And then it comes down to, again, every situation is different. Sometimes we have to continually send somebody out to receive the training, because it's the nature of something that we cannot invest in enough to take on ourselves. Or what we'll do is we'll look for what's called a master instructor or a train the trainer program, and we'll send 1 or 2 people away, invest in them. It's usually, well, obviously it's extra investment, but once they come back, we have them, and they are now the subject matter expert, and then we can continue on. So again, an excellent question that has an awful lot of aspects to it, but to your point, I think to make clear is, yes, we have no illusions that we can solve all of our training problems within our training section or even within HRP. So we just look for the best solution to identify the identified training needs.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And last, Commissioner Beals.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. A lot of my questions were answered. I think Commissioner Kent asked regarding accountability. But so I'm just looking at the presentation, and I'm more so interested to learn more about the fair and impartial policing and sort of the approach. And so what I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the approach of that training, the fair and implicit policing, the fair and impartial policing, sort of what's the approach there? Looking at fear, because for me, in my opinion, fear is one of those things where you, like, if you're sort of operating from a level of fear, it could cause you to take a more aggressive action against a specific person or group of people, and possibly use a less aggressive action against another person, or maybe you use the verbal, I think it was verbal judo listed on the PowerPoint presentation. So I'm just wondering, does the component of the impartial policing, is there a component there that focuses on understanding fear and how, if you're operating from a fear position, how that might make you to take more aggressive actions? Like what's the approach with the training?
So thanks, Commissioner Beals, and through you, Chair. Every interaction starts out with officer presence and generally speaking, a discussion. Some of that detail that you're looking for, I'm going to ask Staff Sergeant McDonald to comment on.
I was listening to your question. I would like to just verify one point. When you're talking about the fear in the approach, and it can definitely go both ways. So I just want to clarify: are you referring to fear from the person, the people we're dealing with, or from the officers themselves?
Sorry, say that again.
Are you referring to the fear of the fear that the officers might be experiencing, or fear that the members of the public are experiencing?
Well, I'm focusing specifically on the officer. So focus specifically on the officer and how they, if fear is present, how that might make them take more aggressive action versus using something like verbal judo.
Okay. Now, so verbal judo would be more, in my opinion, would more direct sort of the situation that you're talking about. We use the term use of force, and we're actually having some meetings now to try to get away from that term. And I think you sort of touched on it. Quite often when people hear the term use of force, they think of physical interaction of some type. But as you pointed out, as soon as the police arrive, the interaction has already begun. People have perceptions of the police, whether it's positive or negative, but their reaction starts as soon as we arrive, as soon as we're seen, on the street. So the idea of verbal judo or tactical communication, however you want to call it, is to achieve compliance in a situation with as little force as possible. And in this case, just by using your words. So as you point out, if there's fear, obviously that is going to have a tendency to escalate a situation because that's what people do. But through the use of force model and through the training, whether it's through verbal judo, tactical communication, that type of thing, what we want from our officers is to evaluate the situation as effectively and as quickly as they can, and then try to gain control of the situation with minimal force. And again, by force, I'm not necessarily referring to physical interaction. That could be as simple as a request, a demand, again, along the lines of verbal judo, just trying to better understand the situation in order to calm the situation, in order to alleviate the situation and deal with the problem.
Commissioner Beals?
Or am I?
Yep, you're good.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you for sort of answering the question. I don't know if I even really posed the question, but I just wanted to look to be sure that, when officers would be able to deal with a situation and know when fear is arising, so that they're not sort of aggressively taking premature action against, somebody of a different ethnicity just based on their, having fear. So thank you for answering that question. I don't have any other questions. Like I said, the last question I had was relating to accountability. If officers are not, if they're not practicing what they're being trained on, then how do we sort of ensure that there's a greater level of accountability and that that they're following what is being trained? So thank you.
Okay, and the one thing I will add to your point is with the fair and impartial policing, that is part of the training, is to better recognize and identify our biases upon arriving, so we can evaluate them within ourselves and react more appropriately than we may with just reacting without education or without self knowledge. So that does touch on actually that directly addresses what you were talking about.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So I'll just ask two questions. We're just because of time, and I know we have some other things to get to. So the two that I'll ask is one, in terms of the legal understanding. So I know that there's a module that talks about, obviously the criminal code, but how often are officers being refreshed on the legal understandings of just general things? For example, when the Minister of Justice determined that street checks are not allowed, how do you approach the officers who might have been on the force for a long time, and the way that they operate was one way, and then now they're being told to do something different, to the new officers coming on to the new way of operating. So what is the ongoing work done for officers when it comes to the legal pieces?
So thanks for the question, Chair. And your first example in regards to the street checks and direction from the Department of Justice, that is communicated directly to the officers. And the example that you were referring to is the ban on street checks. So we know that street checks were banned, and that was communicated, and then direction was put out, basically an order internally, directing members and ordering them that they will not participate in that type of behavior. Other times legislation changes, and depending on the complexity or what's required, various training packages will be put together. If it can't just be covered in an email or an information email to the service, other packages can be put together where the NCOs have a briefing every single shift before members go out on the street. We communicate a number of messages there. Shorter messages around training could be inserted there. All the way up to Staff Sergeant McDonald mentioned earlier, it can be implemented into the next block training session. If it's a larger piece, an hour or 90 minutes of training that's required. So that's how we generally get the message out. And then in addition to that, there's coverage by supervisors to ensure that everyone is following the direction and applying either the new concepts or the legislation or whatever the case may be.
Right. So the other piece too is, some of the more, I'm using quotation, simpler aspects of the law. And, I've heard of these stories before, and even like recent stories of doing an investigation and sometimes, overstepping in the sense of the law. So, if there's an incident and, I want everyone's information that's in this house, and I want to search this room, depending on the circumstance, obviously, is depending on how much the officer can do. So how do you make sure that officers are not overstepping their boundaries, knowing, okay, well, the incident happens outside, but, legally they're not allowed to search inside unless they get a warrant. So how do you make sure that those things are not overstepped, especially with new recruits coming in?
So there's a couple of ways, and first of all, it starts with search and seizure techniques. So the officers will be trained in that, whether it be in the cadet program or, all the way up to the criminal investigation division and more complex search and seizure techniques. The next piece is that active supervisions by our NCOs. And I mentioned earlier, report writing and understanding that. We also have a program in place now in our prisoner care facility where when an individual is brought in, there's a number of checks that the NCO will go through, not the least of which is the grounds for why the individual is being brought into the prisoner care facility. So there's a number of checks and balances to make sure that happens. And we also hear regularly from members of the community. And we take allegations of, overstepping the bounds or, not properly applying the law. We take them very seriously and ensure that we follow up, whether it be through reviews or investigation, to make sure that the officers are, in fact, going by the letter of the law and what their training is.
Okay, great. Thank you. In the last one, the bias-free policing, how long have we been doing that training in-house?
I'm going to get Staff Sergeant McDonald to come in for that one.
Thank you.
Quite simply, we started that in 2009. It took place in block at that time, and we've been including it in all of our onboarding training since then.
Right. Oh, actually, okay, in the block. Okay, I see that. So all I'll say to that, and this is more of a comment, is I think there's we're at a point where that, I don't know if I want to use the word reviewed, but I think that we need to look at the addressing of the bias-free policing, and only to say that because when we think of the perfect example, because it was just mentioned, one example is the Wortley report, seeing that there, the report acknowledged that there was some issues happening within HRP when it came to biases towards folks. So I think if we've been doing that since 2009, if it hasn't happened already, a review or a refresh or something is definitely timely to make sure that, we're not using obviously some of those same principles that might have informed certain officers to do things that obviously today we do not want to continue.
So just to your point, Chair, if I might just add, we recently developed an internal program called Legitimate and Bias-Free Policing. And one of the foundational blocks on that was a review of how we're doing business, was a review of the application of the law in certain circumstances, and ensuring that members were making sure that every interaction was legitimate and bias-free. So when we say legitimate, it's explaining, providing the reasons why we're doing what we're doing, and then to the staff sergeant's comments earlier, making sure that any biases are checked and monitored. So your point is well taken. We are constantly assessing and looking at that. That particular training program of legitimate and bias-free actually came from the Chief's office to all NCOs, and then was cascaded down through NCOs and watch commanders to members of the squad. And then further to what we talked about earlier, we are ensuring that through our quality assurance branch that we're going to be making sure that we're doing things as very best we can. If gaps are identified, we certainly address them either through our quality assurance or our professional standards, or through the regular active supervision being done by our NCOs, watch commanders, and divisional commanders.
Great, thank you, Chief. That's helpful to know. So I'll end it there for time, and thank you for everyone those questions on that. And moving on to Chief Gray, who will now present on the RCMP.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think the luxury of going second is that I've tried to embed everybody's question in my presentation, so I'll try to cover that off as I go through. Similar to Chief Kinsella, I've summarized a lot of our training in regards to pillars or themes. This basically is going over what's available to a member when they leave depot as a cadet and arrive at their first detachment. Next slide, please. So when a cadet leaves depot and they come to their first detachment, they're assigned a field coach, and so this field coach is selected not only for their experience but also their performance and their leadership qualities. And the new member enters the field coaching program. Next slide, please. The field coaching program is broken into 3 phases. It's consistent with the RCMP mission, vision, values, and commitments to our communities and our RCMP service standards. Reinforces the RCMP core values: integrity, honesty, professionalism, compassion, respect, and accountability. Within the field coaching program, it includes several benchmarks and learning events that must be completed in order to receive credit for the program. Provides effective assessment and evaluation, which are achieved through constant supervision through all phases of the field coaching program. The new member is expected to begin learning about and interacting with their community as soon as they arrive. This is a key component of the field coaching program. They're responsible for ensuring the new member is actually learning about their community and not just reporting on it. At the end of month 6, all of the competencies within the assessment must be rated as professional, which indicates the individual's performance meets the RCMP standard of excellence. If they do not reach those assessment levels, then a performance plan is created to address the gaps. We're fortunate within the RCMP as we have an exceptional bench strength nationally and provincially when it comes to training standards. We use trainers, further to Commissioner Kent's question, in-house, current members, retired members, those from the Canadian Police College, but it also depends on the needs and the expertise that we're seeking. We also participate in cross-training with our policing partners to ensure that we're also sharing best practices. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, I think you missed one. There we go. All of our training is tracked through a system that we call Hermes. It's credit based, but we also use that program to report and provide updates in regards to our mandatory training. So that's the first level after the cadet field training that I'll speak about is our mandatory. All of our mandatory is training and tracked through the district and the division. The IMIM, or the Incident Management Intervention Model, as you see here, it's online, but it's also embedded in our operational skills training, which I'll speak about in a little bit. It is updated annually to ensure that the content is current as well as reflecting trends. So even though this course is mandatory annually, it's not the same course every year. They do change it up. In regards to accountability and some of the questions from the commissioners, first and foremost, our members have their supervisors. We have the ability to create performance plans if there's gaps in regards to their behavior or their knowledge. We also have 2 assessments per year, which could highlight areas for development. Our members prepare an annual and individual learning plan every year, which both indicates training that they would like to have, but also training that they must have. And of course, this is tracked through our Hermes program. Next slide, please. Also within our mandatory training, we have biannual training. We've talked about our CEWs. I won't go read the slides for you, but the triannual, which is our operational skills management, this is 3 days. It goes over our PAIR test, which is our physical testing, tactical first aid. I'll highlight the scenario-based training because, again, that's updated every year. That's based on trends. It's also based on needs for each division or district, and you are cross-trained in those. You go with a different group every time you attend in order to, again, learn from others and learn from our mistakes. The intervention options are aligned with the IMIM. This includes our baton, our CEW, and those were all mentioned previously, as well as our first aid and CPR. Next slide, please. Also within our mandatory training, we have in-class or online Aboriginal and First Nations awareness, which is diversity related, as well as our cultural awareness and humility course. Again, diversity related, and as you know, I've mentioned the ACE course many times before. It is not yet mandatory. However, within Halifax District, we are ensuring that all of our members are provided the opportunity to take the course. Many of our courses nationally and provincially are also available online. Those don't include a practicum to ensure that all of our members in our limited duration posts or isolated posts are provided as much training as they can. When it comes to our subject matter experts, we use, depending on the course, we will definitely use internal or external, potentially even international instructors when it comes to certain courses. An example of that would be the gold, silver, bronze incident command systems. Also, in regards to our community-based experts, we use them routinely when it comes to investigative strategies, as for example, intimate partner violence, internet child exploitation, or we also rely on other organizations, for example, the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. Next slide, please. Continuing on with our mandatory training, and again, this is all tracked. All of our members must take this. We have ODERA. This is an intimate partner violence risk assessment tool. Again, you see the list of mandatory training for our members. And I have to say, this mandatory list, for the most part, it just grows. And so we speak often about the time that our members commit to training. And this is even when our members are coming into the province and not from depot, but from away, like myself. We also have to manage all the provincial mandatory training as well, even though we're coming from another division. Each province or division has their own, sometimes lenses to certain courses, and so we ensure that a joining package that is going to a new member coming into the division, these mandatory courses are there and they must achieve them prior to starting work here. Next slide, please. Highlighting some more mandatory training when it comes to health and safety, use of equipment, specifically wellness when it comes to internally within our membership, and also a respectful workplace. Next slide, please. And I think this is one of my last slides on our mandatory training. We have a number of courses that deal with officer safety, but also, again, as I said, you know, the health and wellness of our membership and their team. Next slide, please. We have a wide variety of courses that are available to our membership. So I've just briefly gone over the mandatory training. However, within policing, you know, we can specialize and go through our career with which, depending on which path they choose, and there's even more training in regards to that. Many of our courses, once they've chosen a path, have its own mandatory training, and not to mention prerequisites and validation that's aligned with that. And so there's also many courses in that regards. Next slide, please. And for example, our emergency response team, underwater recovery team, our National Officer Safety Program, CIC or critical incident response, our forensic identification, our police dog services, polygraphists, investigative standards, all of these areas of specialized policing also have their own line of mandatory training, optional training, but then of course validation and certification aligned with that as well. A member can access further training outside of the RCMP as well, and supported through advanced learning. And again, they can range from investigative to administrative, sex crimes, homicide, child exploitation, traffic services, all with their own aligned courses. Many of our specialized sections also have national standards as listed above, and they must adhere to. Next slide, please. Another example of our specialized training is our leadership foundations. Some are mandatory for our promotion opportunities, pardon me. They're available to all members, no matter what path or area of specialization they choose. However, some are based on rank. I've highlighted some of our very small percentage of our training mandatory for first responders, but the list is always being examined and updated, and soon to be added to our mandatory training, of course, will be that which is aligned with the body worn camera initiative. When it comes to ongoing legal changes or direction, further to Chair's question, this is coordinated through our criminal operations section. They would develop appropriate communications and training. It would more than likely be mandatory training and of course tracking for adherence to that training. It's also would be embedded in two of these courses here, supervisor development program as well as manager development program, and as well as the introduction package that would be given to members coming into the division. There's many levels of supervision and accountability that's based or aligned with our investigative practices, one of which is full and frank disclosure within the legal system. Our members are, whatever they do operationally and investigatively is disclosed through the criminal investigation, and such that in itself is also an accountability message, process. That's my presentation. Further to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chief. And I'll start with Commissioner Beals.
Thank you. I don't have any questions at this time.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my question was going to be the same about the internal versus external training, but I think you've covered that. It looks like you've got a pretty good mix of internal and external sources that you reach out to for training. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief Gray. I really appreciate the detail here, and I'm really particularly pleased to see. I mean, it's all, I think, super strong, super good. Certainly the cultural awareness. I especially was pleased to see the health and safety layers and the layers that are around making sure our officers are healthy and going to be able to do the work they do at whether it's HRP or RCMP. It's not an easy job, and I am really pleased to see that. There's some things there I have no idea what they are. So what's a hook knife and terror-free, things like that, but I'll leave that for another day. I'm not sure I even need to know that stuff. But what I would like to know, though, is because this is so extensive, and I think, wow, are we able to have the fees and the access to all of this training? Is that all embedded within the funding budget cost per officer? Is that, or is there anything over and above that we would be looking to access this?
Thank you for your question, and through you, Chair. That is all, I would say, all of the mandatory training, all of the training as it relates to investigative services is embedded in the cost formula. However, as a police officer would specialize more, there might be other opportunities that could be provided that might come out of my budget, however, would be rare. Those would be potentially courses offered outside of the RCMP that would be further to that formula that you get.
I think what stands out to me in this training is that we have a lot of specific training for the social justice side of the responses that we have, like around gender-based analysis and health and safety, and around our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender approaches and awareness, all of that. Like, that's just one or two or three of what's there. The list is extensive, and so it's critical to see it. The other thing I can offer here, I personally think as a counselor, and I'm going to put my counselor hat on for a moment, that this kind of knowledge that on the two presentations we got today, I think would be a really helpful presentation to have for all of council, especially when we're looking. We have to review the budget, and to know the extent of which we are preparing our officers to do the work that they're doing. In this regard, I think it really connects some dots to why we need the budgets that we need and what you're asking for, but for a sense of comfort to know that, yeah, this is all embedded in what we get when we're talking police services. So it's just a food for thought, and maybe we can help move that along a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And last, Commissioner McDougall.
Thank you, Chief Gray. I don't really have any questions, but I do want to add support to Commissioner Kent's comment about presenting these to council. It certainly gives an amazing rationale for what the budget is being used for, and I think it's important for all councillors to be aware of this, the depth of the training that officers are receiving. So I don't know if it means anything. I support that idea. Thank you.
Thanks. And the only comment or question I have, so I understand many go to and help me. Many go for the training somewhere to, I forget the term that you use when they go for the training.
I guess it depends, Chair, what training. So
new recruits.
Pardon me?
New recruits. Sorry.
Depot.
Depot. Yes, depot. So how much of the training that you've mentioned today is something that happens here in Nova Scotia?
All of that training happens in Nova Scotia. The only training that would occur, like all of the cadet field training, of course, is done here with their recruit field trainer or their mentor or their field coach. But generally speaking, our members would go to the Canadian Police College occasionally for courses, or again, depending on what the course was. If it was a shipboarding course, then it would probably be here. But again, for the most part, our members are trained. All the mandatory training is done here, but specialized training may be done elsewhere.
Okay, great. Well, that was a great presentation. Thank you. And I think it was informative enough where there wasn't many questions. So I appreciate you giving us that information. And I don't believe anyone else. I'm just going to make sure I don't have the chat open. Sorry, make sure nobody. Nope. Great, Chief. Thank you so much. And we'll move to the next, which is on me, the update on potential legislation for police articles. So this one was deferred pending some information, and I wasn't sure exactly where it came from, so I reached out to the Department of Justice. Actually, they reached out to me initially, just to get some clarification, and they provided me with a quick update for the board that I guess helps us understand what, and it's just only a quick line, understand where this comes from, and that's really it. That's all I have. So the provincial government is examining options regarding the access and use of police articles, including legislative options. Police agencies have been engaged in, and feedback has been sent to the Department of Justice for consideration. We will update you further once we have more information from the department. So after our discussion, this is pretty much what they said on this aspect, and there's nothing really more to share. If any commissioners want to blurt out, you'd be happy to. I won't go through the whole list, but if anyone has a question or something they'd like to ask, I'll try to answer it. But as the province said, there's not much they can say, as they're examining options.
Mr. Chair, may I just ask a question? Are we supposed to be able to see a list right now?
A list?
Am I listening to you? I just don't want to miss something if I was supposed to open a document.
No, the list is the speakers list. So who the speakers list.
Got you.
Yeah, sorry.
Like what?
No.
What?
No, sorry, speakers list. All right, well, not seeing anyone have any questions on that, we'll move on to the agenda, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Do we have any of those items, clerk?
Nothing on those items for this meeting today.
All right, great, thank you. Moving on to information items brought forward, there are none. And moving on to reports, 10.1.1 HRM Wortley recommendations update, and I'll swing this over to Chief Costello.
Thanks, Chair, and through you to the Commission, I'll start off with community engagement. Our recruitment campaign for HRP's Next Police Science program has wrapped up, and we are in the final stages of cadet selections. As you know, this offered an excellent opportunity to do community outreach during a time when we had the pandemic, and we used a variety of virtual outreach opportunities and partners with various organizations to reach out to members of diverse communities to spread the word about our recruitment. Our second offering of the 5-day module called Journey to Change has been set for the last week of February. Very fitting month to be offering that training, and participants will gain knowledge directly from community leaders and educators on important topics, including anti-Black racism, intergenerational trauma, and the impact of police interactions on members of the community. In continuation of our follow-up to the commitments made in the November 2019 apology to the African Nova Scotian community, we continue to examine how we can create further opportunities to engage with youth and build trust and potentially provide mentorship opportunities. As far as data collection, a committee has been established by the Department of Justice consisting of law enforcement and government representatives and community stakeholders. The meetings are co-chaired by Deputy Chief Don McLean and Ms. Kimberly Franklin of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. The committee has met 4 times to date and recently confirmed that Dr. Timothy Bryan will join the committee to assist with the important work being done. We continue to remind the community through our social media channels that they can request their personal street check data through the FOIPOP process, and to date, we have received 11 requests. Most recently, we sent out messages on January 13th, and will continue to provide regular updates to the community in this area. And just in regards to the street check ban, it does continue, and we continue to operate in a banned environment.
Thank you, Chief. And I'll just continue. So with the tracking document, that was something that was maintained and monitored by past Chair Borden, and I took on that item to continue to maintain and update that. So the last version I got was updated recently, and for me the next piece is getting back together with the folks involved, RCMP, the Department of Justice, and others to have those discussions. So obviously the chief updates us on their aspects, but there's some aspects of it that belong to other folks. So that is something that's going to happen in the future, whenever we can get together and look at if some of these items that belong to different bodies, Department of Justice, HRP, RCMP, etc., how those are being handled. So nothing to update on the tracking document since last time past chair presented to us, and in my next pieces will be to meet with the folks involved in that. So we'll go on to the speakers list, starting with Commissioner Beals.
Do we have Commissioner Beals?
I can see, I think his mic is doing something, but I can't hear him. Is he still in the meeting, clerk? I think I see his phone.
Mr. Chair, previously his number was actually entered in twice. I see the second one is gone, and he had sent an email that he might need to leave the meeting at around 2. So I wonder if that second one was him and he left, and this first one may have been an initial attempt. So I don't think he's in the meeting.
Okay, moving on to Commissioner Blackburn.
No further questions. I'm good, sir.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Kent?
No, I'm good, thanks.
All right, and Commissioner McDougall?
No questions.
Great, thank you. So for me, I'm thinking now the Wortley report was completed November of 2019. It's hard to remember when did we officially get the report to the commission?
I believe it was March 2019.
March. It was March 2019. Okay. So March 2019, and so we're coming up very close to the two-year mark, which is kind of wild to think about. So I don't know if these reports that have come through are very helpful, and thank you, Chief, in keeping us updated on that. I don't know if we need to have I don't know what this looks like, but a bigger update, a two-year mark update of from where we got to where we are now. Not sure what that looks like, not sure how that would work. Maybe we can have that discussion, with our meetings that we have, Chief, and see if that's even necessary, because you've been updating us since then. But coming up on 2 years, it might be worth doing even if it's a one-page. This is where we got for folks, just so they can look at the information, maybe even in a timeline. Don't know. We can brainstorm that, but coming up to 2 years is significant, and there has been some things that have happened in that time period, and it'd be good to kind of do a follow-up with the community of, hey, 2 years of Wortley, this is where we're at. So don't know exactly how that will look, but maybe we can have that discussion in and come back to the commission at some point and get some ideas on how that could be presented. So that's it for me on that. And seeing no one else has any comment, unless you have anything, Chief, on that, probably not.
No, thanks, Chair. I don't have anything further other than it's a good idea to reconvene and doing a 2-year, 24-month assessment of where we are. We'll need to engage, obviously, all the stakeholders, including the Department of Justice, and I think it's a good exercise for the community for sure.
Cool. So yeah, we'll take that back and have those discussions. All right. So moving on to 10.2.1, Commissioner McDougall update on committee to define the funding police working group. Oh, sorry, Chief Gray. I left you out.
That's okay. Did you want me to do my Wortley update?
It's totally up to you.
Well, I have it in front of me, so.
All right.
So from a street check ban perspective, our communications were updated, reflecting the new date for the RCMP, which was holding the data. Remember, we had a 2-year purge there. To date, we've had no ATIP requests for street check data. Currently, our strategic communications section are producing posters that will continue to inform the public on where they can obtain their information and data, and hoping to partner with libraries around the province as well, because as you know, this has a provincial impact for us as well. In regards to data collection, as identified by Chief Kinsella, the Wortley Report Research Committee, Inspector Pepper sits on that committee as well, and their most recent meeting was January 30th, and the researcher, Dr. Timothy Bryan, was also there. Also, Inspector Pepper sits on she represents Nova Scotia on the RCMP National Headquarters Race-Based Data Collection Working Group, and these meetings are held 2 weeks with tight timelines to begin collection and reporting on police data relative to race. In regards to the community engagement, obviously, you know, it's challenging in regards to COVID. We have an open house that's scheduled for in the North Preston area for the week of February 22nd in the evening. That information will be put out through yourself, Chair, once it's confirmed. Provide us an opportunity to speak with the residents, hear their concerns, and building relationships with the community members. Of course, we're aligning this with the COVID-19 restrictions. The RCMP African Canadian Experience Workshop was held in joint with the Department of Justice in January in Dartmouth. Since the course was funded by DOJ, participants were selected from policing agencies across the province. We're very proud of our ACE course, and as such, making it available to a number of other police services. 21 participants from across the province, majority of them senior management positions from Bridgewater, Kentville, HRP Amherst, New Glasgow, and Annapolis, as well as sheriffs and victim services attended. We are planning a town hall meeting and meeting with the community mobilization team for North Preston. Once the restrictions are lifted as well, we're creating a Stetsons and Spurs group within the North Preston detachment area. One of our members in North Preston is also currently creating an initiative with Graham Creighton Junior High School, in conjunction with the teaching staff there regarding Black History Month. He'll be speaking about his experiences, but also as an RCMP officer, but also growing up in his community. In regards to recruiting, RCMP recruiting is still working through our COVID backlogs, and we should be caught up by the end of February. We have connected with the Black Educators Association, as well as the African Canadian Services Branch within the Department of Education, and we are scheduled to do a brief introduction to the regional coordinators actually in 2 days. The intent is to share our contact information in regards to basic requirements for the RCMP, which would better prepare the applicants. We're also aligned with some of our other divisional partners in celebrating Black History Month, and recruiting is traveling the province in that regard. Since our last board meeting, we've conducted 6 virtual pre-exam sessions, 3 virtual pre-application assessments, and 10 of our 57 registered who have written the exam are identified as a visible minority. Recruiting is also piloting a test questionnaire for our candidates in regards to bias, and so this information will be the foundation for a course or an assessment tool that will be created nationally that will be provided to applicants to the RCMP in order to gauge and measure bias.
Thank you. Great update. I'm happy that you flagged me down. That was great information. I'll just let, if anyone wants to jump in and have any questions, you can just unmute yourself and weigh in. Yep, Commissioner Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question. I'm really pleased to hear about the increased Stetsons and Spurs program. I think it's a very valuable program. Excuse me. Something here. Very valuable program. I think there's a lot to gain from it. There's a lot to gain from it, not only for the leadership and the opportunity to learn for the young people, but the connectivity to the community that it really it does for any of the detachments. Can you just update me on how many of those programs do we have in HRM right now? Because you spoke of the East Preston one coming to that area. Where are the others? And if we have any? It's been a while since I've looked at Stetsons and Spurs. I try to support it all the time.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Kenton. Through you, Chair. We have an overarching Stetson and Spurs in Halifax District, and so there are a number of different youths that are participate in it, as well as others outside of our district. But we felt that it was important to have specialized or targeted programs specifically to certain youth groups, and so that's why. And one of our newest members to North Preston Detachment has a lot of experience in regards to this program, so she is the one that's initiating this.
Great. Well, I'm really pleased to hear it, and if there's anything we can do to help support those on a local level, please just reach out. I really think they're great.
Thank you, Commissioner Kent. All right, so now we'll go back to, well, we'll go forward, sorry, to Commissioner McDougall, who's going to update us on the working group, defund police working group.
Thank you, Chair. My update really consists of a notice to our commission that we have developed a terms of reference as requested, and I believe it's been circulated for this meeting separately, and we can discuss it in March at that meeting. I don't think it made it to the agenda in time for this, to give people enough time to read over and prepare their questions. So we can do that in March. And it's my understanding that Al Jones would like to do a presentation in March, if possible, if we have the time to allow for that, so that this agenda was pretty full, so didn't work for today, but I just like to suggest that we include that. I don't know, Commissioner Blackburn, do you have any other points to add to this?
No, the only thing that has come up since then is possible collaboration with Dr. Amy Siciliano. We're going to be meeting with her on Wednesday to discuss any potential opportunities to, she's mentioned a couple of things that she might be able to do with her office to help further the work of this committee. So we're just meeting with her on Wednesday to get an update, and we'll move from there.
Okay, great, thank you. So one thing to ask. So if March is not a problem, and speaking with obviously both of you commissioners here who are working on that, and folks involved with the committee, we can put it on the agenda for a presentation, and that will give us time to look at the terms of reference as a commission. If it comes back that work wants to be done sooner than March, we could if people's schedules allow, schedule a special meeting where just this item is on it, so we can start the process to get going. So I'll take that, if you can take that back to the folks involved, if they want to wait until March, great, and we can put it on the agenda and make sure that we get to it. If they want to do it sooner, we can make a special meeting, and this one will be on the agenda, which should be fairly quick meeting, and we can have that discussion. So I'll let you take that back. I won't ask any questions as of now, and it's been circulated, and I'll go to Commissioner Kent.
Thank you. I am going to play devil's advocate here, Mr. Chair, on the suggestion around a special meeting. I've been saying to myself today, wow, these committees are taking a lot of our scheduled time, but it's okay. It's all good stuff. However, I have two reasons for suggesting that we do it in March, and one is that the pressure's on our schedule right now, certainly those of us as councillors, but also I really would like the time to sort of review this, and second to that piece is I'm wondering if the clerk or someone could help point me to any particular minutes or data that might have come forward to the board at the time when all of this was struck and subsequent to then to get us to here. I think that would give me a better context of what I am looking at now and why. It would also, March would also give me a chance after getting that information to reach out to a few of you who were there to help us do the best job we can in March, and so we don't have to keep delay this anymore. So that's just my thoughts on it, and if maybe someone could reach out with some intel on this, it would be helpful to me and probably some of the other newer members.
That's actually a great point. So if clerks, if you could send us, the meeting minutes from the two meetings where we first had this discussion, and the second one where we discussed the actual motion. I forget the dates. I would tell you the dates if I remembered. And also the presentations would be worthwhile that we received from Dr. Siliano and DeRico Simons. And also there was something else I just thought of that would be very helpful. In the motion, the motion should be included in the minutes, but the motion that led us here would be good to have. So that actually is a good point for us for the next, well, hopefully before that next meeting, to get that information so we can have that background. So good point. And if the clerks, if you need support with that, I might be able to find some documents as well.
So
all right.
On that note, what we'll do is if this is going to be coming through the agenda review process, we'll put this on an agenda, and we'll pull together a cover report for it, so that we'll hopefully keep all those things in one location so that they're all easily accessible.
Great. And and when it gets done, if we could send it to the commission, even if it's before agenda, just so folks can review it, that'd be great.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, thank you. Yep, Commissioner McDougall.
I would appreciate seeing all of those documents in one place too, because I'm sure for Commissioner Kent it's confusing, and to sort of jump into the meeting at a point when many things have been discussed and decided. But it does go back to last June, and the significant recommendation made in September and then verified again in November is really, those would be the significant times, although the presentation from DeRico and Amy was in June, I believe, or July. Anyway, I think it's a good idea, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so moving on to the 10.3.1 Management Employee Relations Committee. That's me. I haven't sat in any of those meetings yet. I believe one was, I think, last week. So it just the previous meeting just came up too quick in order for me to be involved, but the next one, I should be there to be able to report. I'm not sure if Commissioner McDougall, if you have anything to, because I know you attended one previously, but yeah, I have nothing to report because I wasn't able to make the last meeting.
No, I went to replacing the chair, I believe in December and January, but I'm not aware of any other meetings since then.
Okay. All right, so we'll leave that there for just as an ongoing item for until next one. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Kane.
Thank you. Again, just trying to keep my head straight on all of these. Have we received, and if we have, please forgive me, a lot came at me at once, but have we received kind of a list of the different committees that there might be an expectation that we need representation on? And if we haven't, it would be really helpful for me to just have a better sense of who's on what. And yeah.
Yeah, that we could do that. So my understanding, just off memory, so we have the newly formed Defund the Police Committee working group that Councillor Blackburn and Commissioner McDougall are on. We have the Management Employee Relations Committee, which the past chair sat on, and Commissioner McDougall attended when she wasn't available. There's the Police Foundations board. Police Foundations. What's the Police Foundations considered a board? Is it a board? Yeah. Our current or past chair Borden sat on or sits on that, and then there's the external bodies that Commissioner McDougall sits on, the provincial and federal Canadian. Help me out, Commissioner McDougall.
Canadian Association of Police Governance, which is a national body, and the Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance. So I represent us on the provincial association, and I represent Nova Scotia along with one other person on the national body.
Right.
Could I just mention too that the foundation and Management Employee Relations Committee, Natalie took those on. They weren't necessarily specifically for the chair to sit on. It was because she chose to do that. If any other commissioner is interested in either of those bodies, that's an opportunity for somebody else to represent if Natalie wants to step down from either.
No, good point. Good point. And other than that, and then there's the diversity working group. Again, I can't. There's so many groups and commissions. Someone help me with that title as well. The diversity working group.
At this point, Mr. Chair, I think there's enough that have already got past me in my note taking. So if we could have something and have the track, take a little bit of a synopsis on what they are. It'll just help me understand as we go along who's talking about what and who would be the person maybe I want to have a chat with to help better understand outside of the meetings, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
I just have to come back and report, but it can be something that's just an information sheet to all of us. Anyway,
and that's something that we can do. That's not a problem, right? We could get that information.
Chair.
Yep.
Just to your question on the PDWG or the Police Diversity Working Group, it's Commissioner Beals that sits on that.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, and if again throwing some work at the clerk, oh that rhymes. Good job. Well, if we can get that information as well, any groups that commissioners sit on, that'd be very helpful.
So yeah, we can pull that information together. The one piece that I will just mention is we will be able to provide things that have been done through the commission work via motion, by a report and presentation. Some of the other nuanced conversation pieces, if they haven't been captured by a motion, it will be a little more difficult to pull together, but we'll do our best to pull that together in this report and in some of the information sheets.
Yeah, you pull together anything that's from the commission, and then what we can do is before you send it out, I can look at it and even the chiefs, and if there's anything missing, we'll fill in the blanks and then circulate it to the group.
Super. Do we need a motion for that or anything?
No, we don't need a motion for that, right? We're good?
You don't need a motion.
Okay.
I would only add one thing, Chair, and that is, these materials should sort of be retained, so any new members coming on to the commission, they could be made available to them.
Yeah, I was suggest that as we do on council with the changing of the guard, we can just have this as a regular update for any commissioners that are joining or leaving or whatever. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Great. Good points. All right, so moving on. So next we have the updates from the chief, and not to condense it too much, but because I know we still have the in camera that we have to do. So if the chiefs hit on the high points, and if we have any questions on the high points, we can ask them. So we'll start with Chief Costello.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just keep it real brief. So just in regards to COVID-19, we continue to enforce the public health directives, and just want to say that we do appreciate everyone's efforts to help us reduce the spread. And just talk about this month's road safety theme is distracted driving, and in an effort to keep our roadways safe, we are continuing to post educational messaging on our social media platforms, and this includes sharing the city's safety posts and other partner agencies. And we do have our traffic unit out, as well as our patrol people, making sure that people are doing their best to obey the traffic laws. And I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you, Chief Gray. And then we'll do questions.
Thank you. I recognize it's an opportunity to update the board and the public on our RCMP initiatives. However, I'm going to take just a quick second to thank our membership and our staff. It's a challenging world we're all living in, and many are quick to criticize our police officers and our operations. And I want to thank our community members as well for their continuing support in our policing efforts. Our district continues to work as emergency first responders during a pandemic. Although COVID has become a routine for some, our membership continues to successfully operate and in partnership with HRP in an even more high-risk environment, continuing every day with our commitment to keeping our communities safe. In regards to that, I just wanted to highlight some of our traffic statistics in regards to the district experienced a 36% increase in impaired driving charges last year, with 34 in January 2021 as well. Highlighting one of our members in regards to, he actually had 139 charges himself in the year 2020. So also in regards to us updating our communication strategy for the district, I know many councillors and commissioners have accepted the invitation for the February 16th presentation. And today as well, we've forwarded the chair and the commissioners a list of our targeted communication topics, which came out in our last board meeting. I apologize, I can't remember which commissioner was asking for the monthly highlights subject matter for our communication strategy. And also in regards to comms, wanted to highlight, I don't know if many people knew about our hashtag 9 p.m. routine. That was a social media strategy. We had it for 2 years. It was a very successful campaign and contributed to the overarching provincial crime prevention activities targeting break-and enters and theft from vehicles. We can say that last year we had the lowest statistics in regards to break-and enters to residences as well as total thefts from motor vehicles, going from 188 to 107 and theft from motor vehicles from 386 down to 243. So just wanted to recognize our staff in regards to that initiative. It was, they will be phasing it out. However, we have a number of other crime reduction and crime prevention communication strategy initiatives that are on their way. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Beals is still not, yep. So Commissioner Blackburn.
No questions at this time, thank you.
Great, Commissioner Kent. Okay, seeing nothing.
Thanks.
Okay, and Commissioner McDougall.
No questions, thank you.
All right, great. And yeah, thank you, Chief Gray. Great, good information. You said you've seen a 38% increase on impaired driving. Was the stat use? Is that 38 on top of last year's 34?
This was so from 2019 to 2020, we had an increase of 38% overall
Right.
in charges.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay. Well, that just means that the work is being done to catch those folks who are doing that. So appreciate that the updates, Chief. Now there's no added items. There's no items for future consideration. Moving on to the in-camera presentation. Yes. Thumbs up to you. Moving on to the presentation. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, this is from the Auditor General's office as information for the commission related to the IT report that's coming out in finance this week. So because it is related to security, we can't discuss it in the public, but the public report will be available once the Audit and Finance Committee meets, I believe, on Thursday. I'm not exactly sure of the date. So with that, I ask that we move in camera.
Motion to move in camera?
All right, moved by Commissioner Blackburn, second by Commissioner McDougall, and that we move in camera. Thank you, and I believe we don't need to come back.
So we will need to come back to this meeting once we're done in camera to adjourn. So
Oh,
there's
yes, you're right.
another,
Yes.
yeah, there's another meeting invitation that everyone should have for the in-camera section of this meeting. So it's a calendar invitation. So you will leave this one, and then we will come back to this public meeting once the in-camera section is done.
Okay, great. And if you don't decide to come back and join us online, the next meeting is March 8th, and we are now going in camera.
Simon, are you there?
Ian, can you hear me?
Marty's probably.
Hey, Marty, it's Dan.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Dan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, are we in the right spot?
Well, I don't know. I had a second invitation there. I clicked on it and a thing flashed up saying it's a private meeting or something.
Okay, because I don't think I have the invite for the in camera, so I jumped back on here just to see if I was missing something.
Well, I'm not sure I have the invite for the camera too. I've got a message from Ian here.
Okay,
I was just gonna send him an email, Dan, and
okay,
and say, you know, what's going on here, you know?
Sounds good.
I'll send something right now.
Okay. I mean, maybe we're not to be on it. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. No. I don't think that's, well, I have to be or they can't have a meeting, so.
Yeah.
Right? All right, he's calling me now. Let's see. Ian?
Let me know, will you, if we're in, if we're out?
Well, Ian, did I get an invitation? I clicked on the second one and it says it's a private meeting. So. I'm connecting. Hold on.
4. Yep.
Can you hear me, Ian? Ian?
You gone, Marty? Yeah, we just.
Are we gonna have quorum this time?
We'll find out. Just waiting to see if we get everybody. Because we're still live, right? Is that correct? We're still live?
We are live.
Yes, that's correct.
We
Okay.
will need 2 more members to be able to have quorum. If we don't have quorum, then the meeting will be over.
All right. Which I think at this point is, okay, we got Lisa, we just need Commissioner McDougall. All right, so no matter what, the meeting's gonna be over. There's no official business other than adjournment. So I don't want to keep Commissioner Blackburn, who has to go, too long. So I can't call for the question because we don't have, or I can't call for adjournment because we don't have quorum. So really, the meeting is adjourned.
Okay, so let us know what you can come up with.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
I think Carol just popped in.
Okay, great. All right, great. So the next meeting is going to be March 8th, 2021. We will see what comes back from the working group to see if we can do a special meeting, but I think the March meeting should be fine considering what we heard. So I ask that we motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for
Thank
your work,
you all.
commissioners.
Excuse me. Just before we do that, I just want to register. I have absolutely no communication from the Auditor General's office except an email to say she was recalling a message. So there's nothing from anyone named Chalk except back in December when they were trying to put this meeting together. So something is awry in emails there. So if someone could send me that